first pick?
I already am asking myself if we are going to see a little bit more of that old school Chinese Sky Temple playstyle with the heavy emphasis into wave clear within the 4 and playing it a bit more Infernal Shrines, Dragonshire, you know, Tomb of the Spider Queens-esque. I don't want to see that because not only does the map complement aggression, but when Ballistics, which we can assume is probably going to draft a lot of aggression, brings that fight, it's going to look a little bit more severe than the last game just because the map accents a snowball playstyle. So I hope to not see that, but it might be what we need to see out of SPT. If maybe proactiveness, not so much into the team fight, but in the macro play, I think just proactive is the best way to describe what I want to see from SPT.
Yeah, that is... I 100% agree with you.
It can be killing minions, it can be killing heroes. I just want something to be killed and not be reactionary.
Yeah, not waiting to see what Ballistics does and then figure out what to do off of that, because the little bit amount of time that it takes for you to react off of that just is going to give Ballistics even more things to go after, whether it be some free structural damage, another mercenary camp, a temple, anything at this point. Bans on ETC and Tassadar. Both of these teams have played some Genji on this map before. Ballistics played it versus Fnatic. SPT also brought out the Illidan yesterday on Sky Temple.
I hope we get the Genji in this one pick here for SPT. I feel not necessarily, I'm going with my heart at this point. I just want aggression and bringing that fight up to them. Ballistics as well, we know that they have some very, very effective Genji players.
Too many.
Too many Genji players. Not enough Genji players, Gilly. There's no such thing as too many Genji players.
The first time I saw SDE playing Genji at this tournament, I was like, but why no SC Genji? And then you saw him play, you're like, okay, I get it.
Yeah, and then you're just like, my goodness, what do we do? Okay, so SPT, they're going to take away either one of those players, Genji, and pick it up for themselves.
Nice. I like Melody C's Genji too.
I mean, personally, I mean, I'm not kidding when I say when Genji's earlier release, some of the performance out of Melody C, I mean, you and I were talking about it, like, is this guy debatably the best Genji? At least one of? It's amazing. Specifically his body blocking, his positioning is outstanding.
Yeah, doesn't mind using Swift Strike earlier on in a fight to chase someone down to put him to where he can body block, but continually stutter step to get the most out of his auto attacks. Dahaka and Greymane as two choices for Ballistics. Dahaka enables Ballistics to do exactly what they did in the last game, which is get an advantage somewhere in a lane and then come in for a mismatched fight. And then just Greymane, just as a staple, but Arthas to counter that.
Really enjoying these picks here for SPT, responsive into what seems like our possible new king, Arthas, in this tournament. It's been a slow trend to rise as a response here to the Greymane. And then the Rhaegar, it works both. Right now, if you look at SPT's drafts, it is very objectively pretty powerful, not overly synergistic, but by no means is it, clashing in playstyles. Ballistics ended up banning that Abathur, and I think it's pretty heads up, but even just knowing the teams and the maybe skill gap between the two, if SPT had drafted the Abathur, I go the game. Just how are you going to win if you lose that much power into the early game? I do think it's synergized with their comp and objectively brilliant ban by Ballistics.
Karzim, also an understandable ban, considering that Ballistics have been executing people quite quickly, and SPT wants to do the same, and Palm can limit that. A lot of favor of Karzim that's been growing a lot more, but especially in the eastern region as we led up to BlizzCon.
It's that Iron Fist, man. Thing chunks. Sadly, Karzim, well, I don't know about sadly, because if you gave the guy wave clear, he was just absolutely a god among men. But sadly, whenever you play the Karzim, you always feel bad when you're throwing the Iron Fist onto those minions, because it's just, it's not as bad as Uther, but it's pretty close. And the next two picks for Ballistics, Media and New Barak and Lucio picked together.
Lucio's Sound Barrier can help a team get through Dragon Blade.
Is this the last pick, Stukov? On the side of Ballistics, I wouldn't mind it. I don't think it's a must, but I feel like it would be a really cool really cool pickup for them.
Yeah.
Mainly because Arthas has such a bad time.
He's not going to be very happy versus that kind of team comp.
You know, you could get even worse with it and just go like Locust Swarm attempt, just try and rid as much damage as you can. I mean, it's not nearly as good as it used to, where you used to pretty much just eat every goal immediately, but...
Yeah, you'd maybe see Cocoon to deal with Dragon Blade, but you do have Sound Barrier to try to get through that too. Just depends who they want their primary focus target to be.
Okay, so now that we have Arthas, that with the kind of offensive playstyle that SPT's drafted so far, I hope that it only continues here with the last 2 picks. That I just hope that they do not go and kind of take a step back with the offensive playstyle they have with 3/5 of the roster. What do we see? Murden and Li Ming, so very in the face of Ballistics. I mean, mechanically extremely demanding composition, but if they get that 1 kill, it's very, very likely that a 2nd and 3rd are going to follow.
Double Warrior, double reset, and it's all on ZZH to keep them alive. Of course, Muradin and Arthas have ways of keeping themselves alive, and Li Ming and Genji have mobility and dominance. Now this last pick for Ballistics, are you still wanting the Stukov after seeing? All right.
I would definitely be dead, I feel like. Unless I'm overly proactive, it can respond decently, but it's one of those, considering what your opponent has, do you really need to take that type of risk anymore? It's a double reset composition. Just make sure that nobody has to be overly vulnerable with a slow health pool like, I don't know, Stukov and his lurking arm.
But what do you, they already have the 2 warriors. Is it another support then? I
wouldn't mind, maybe, give me, I guess.
What about like Falstad or, well, that's Genji. Tyrael. Ooh, triple warrior. Okay.
Triple warrior, but I feel like, again, when looking at that kind of variable I was talking about, is it worth committing to those low risk health pools? I feel like the composition that the members of Ballistics have is already pretty good.
Yep.
And just making sure Sanctification straight up says there are no resets for a long period of time in this choking. I think it's a nice adjustment. This is the 2nd time that we've seen Ballistics wait for that last slot to make a, what do they have? How can we make sure that their win condition is limited as possible?
Yeah, it's a really cool adjustment to see from Ballistics. As long as they are not going to be, I'm guessing this means that SC will be playing that Tyrael, and I'm not sure how practiced they'll be on the Sanctification and sound barrier between those 2.
Can I have a special request?
Yeah, you got like a song request for a specific hero.
I need Jung Ha to play the Tyrael.
Yeah, that's true.
His Tyrael is one of the best in the world. It's just absolutely amazing when he gets on the hero. Statistically, since almost the formation of competitive Heroes of the Storm and his involvement within it, he has almost always been the highest performing Tyrael in the world.
Well, Hooligan will definitely be on the Anub, so it's just dependent on Jung Ha and SC, but in the past for this team, it's been SC who plays Tyrael when they
you don't need to break my heart,
go for them. Yeah, well,
they're feeling good.
Yeah,
they had to drive the
I'm trying to temper expectations, Dred, as we go into this. I mean to make sure that you're still going to be here. Won't be too sad if it's him.
I can't even look at the other side now.
Okay, well, why don't you introduce SPT then?
All right, I got this. In the blue, it is going to be SPT, where Arthas, played by Soap, Melody C on that Genji, Misaka playing Murden, Chen Xiao on Li Ming, and ZZH on Rhaegar.
And looking to stop the reset train is Ballistics Magi playing Lucio, Hooligan on Anub, SDE playing Greymane, Jung Ha on Dahaka, I'm sorry, Dred, and SCSC playing Tyrael.
Don't get me wrong. SC can play about everything amazingly.
Yes.
It's just in particular, that is, it is the go-to for me. Whenever I think of Jung Ha making the world-class plays, it's always on that Tyrael. Got to get a collapse here after a bit of pressure displayed by SPT, maybe biting off a little bit too much. Hooligan with great body blocks. Drag hit after that. First blood for Ballistics.
I requested good synergy, and at least in the level 1 fight, they showed up. And the Elder and Might to follow up with the Burrow Charge, the drag from that too. And Ballistics claim first blood, setting them up nicely, and getting some vengeance for nearly losing a tower in the mid.
But we see where when a teamfight composition with double resets and no wave clear fails to be able to win a skirmish at level 1, what problems are kind of brought to light. Not only did they lose 4 to 3 minions in the top wave, there was a very, very slow wave clear into the mid, which is why they couldn't make that transfer, and then pressure down below. So as Ballistics, not only do they have the experience killed there, but they also have an experience to the minions, and those, what I'm trying to highlight here is that SPT's composition, yes, it has that team fight I was talking about, what I wanted to see from them, but if they aren't winning those skirmishes as their advantage, the lack of macro is really going to hurt.
Well, they'll get another chance soon because we've got Temple activating in 10 seconds. Ballistics went down to the bottom to prep themselves up for the second Temple phase by taking out a tower there. And where do they set up? Where do both of these teams set up? SPT and getting damage on that mid tower and having this double reset composition earlier on could try to take this team fight here, but they're not all here. Arthas is in the top lane. A drag hits Muradin, and SPT lose their primary warrior at the start of this temple phase.
Yeah, it was a bit of a curious decision to have Li Ming Rhaegar as the duo split pressure up on the bottom, at least with risking the positioning that we saw there from SPT. Maybe a bit of miscommunication, but that is going to lead to Ballistics only furthering the small advantage that they got early on, consuming a lot of these shots up on top. I would expect an aggressive transition down from them and just trying to bully SPT off. It's one of the things that we see generally, especially when Korean teams pick Sky Temple as a second map in a dominant game like we saw against the first, is they just go, this map snowballs, we're going to be the bullies in the early game, and once we hit about 5 minutes into the game, you just don't have a chance. You're behind instructors, you're behind experience.
Geez, bully is the exact word that I would say here, or I was even thinking.
Boop.
They are not letting anything. Oh, so good. Misaka staying alive a little bit longer. ZCH came in. They'll at least trade and take out SCSE. Jinxiao teleports out of the Eldruin's might, but even still, Ballistics is getting way ahead because of these temples.
Yeah, that's a double front wall already taken out for them, and both up in top and mid, whereas no structural damage done by the side of SPT. There's still time, though, to be able to recover. Our first Shrine phase is a bit devastating. You know, it's a little bit more of a morale thing than it is so much a, can you come back from this? But I'm going to highlight the same problem I did before and why it is so important that SPT, if they draft this style of composition, that maybe the execution has to be there. That if they fail with these next couple of minutes and the posturing around the secondary Shrine phase, which is going to be bottom, not having a global to deal with top, it is going to lead to that brinking of level 10 for Ballistics and that kind of 3-level lead as we witnessed in game number 1.
Yeah, very difficult phase for them going forward if they can't stabilize in this next temple phase. Meanwhile, Ballistics just staying down in the bottom, trying to enable their own Giants for the damage, and Paradise is doing his best to try to rotate in between those lanes as Arthas, just to keep up with the laning that SCSE and Jungha are being able to do. But SPT do take out the Giants without taking any more damage in this bottom lane, and that does help at least. They have level 7 for that next temple phase, for the next fight there.
They did end up getting the Dragonite, or excuse me, the first Shrine phase because the rotation's a little bit slower, so it's going to be spawning at about that like 4 minute 45 section. Both teams backing out to their night camp, responding to it near perfectly. And this is where SPT has to answer the tough question. How are they going to deal with that Shrine phase? Right now, the poking and down to below shows that they want to really make sure they get a 5-man skirmish, and I think that's probably in their best interest. Not trying to risk the, can we get a gank on Jungha on top, which is, I mean, let's be real here. Ballistics in their map sense, it feels just a notch ahead and seems like it's something that they might not be able to aspire to get.
Yeah, SCSC pretty far forward here, checking things out and where SPT is. All of SPT has come up around this area. And while they do good damage down, it does leave SDE in the bottom to push that lane really hard as that Greymane and get some damage done to the next tower ahead of this temple, which is just now activated. SPT, though, getting their bruisers and pushing them up, keeps Dahaka there a little bit longer. They know that they're going to have to bring everyone down. They don't have the global advantage, and they understand that this is the point that they have to start winning to get back into this game.
And they did end up losing maybe a couple of seconds that they wouldn't have liked to onto that Shrine, because now it leads to you know, a free rotation. Not only the damage done by Ballistics, but Jungha will have a little bit more time up on top than traditionally he would have for himself. But Ballistics hasn't shown too much interest towards that bottom Shrine. Instead, keeping Dahaka, letting him use that macro problem up on top and just applying pressure elsewhere. So SPT needs to make sure, though, that they don't commit too many resources to defend elsewhere on the map like Ballistics is applying pressure, because if they do so, they might lose too many shots up on bottom.
Dahaka stalks bottom, but
wow,
the damage from SPT really good from ZZH and Misaka using that Lightning Bond to nearly take out SCSC, but Ballistics shows up faster, takes out Rhaegar, and now Melody C is in trouble too. Uses a Cyber Agility, Sound Barrier as Ballistics hit 10. Second kill on Genji.
Don't know necessarily whether that was needed, but it really was one of those
barrier?
Just making sure the fact that they are going to make sure that they don't lose anybody and snowball this game. When Misaka is revealed from the cocoon, that is going to be another kill. And now Ballistics, full level lead, a lot of pressure down below. I'm assuming they'll get this fort. They did miss the window of opportunity of that 10 into boss play we see sometimes, pressure through mid, but it's very much again, like game number 1, them in control from minute 1.
That was patient and great foresight from Ballistics to know that they can give up the initial shots from that, because once they get 10 and get the kills, then they can go in and just take the fort for themselves. SDE and the rest of Ballistics being sped away from all of the damage. The Arthas, what seemed like inevitable that SPT would win that fight, but thanks to having the Lucio, Ballistics gets out only really just using nothing other than the cocoon and the sound barrier that they used to start that fight.
And for anybody who's wondering, beyond just some of the statistical buffs that have happened to Lucio, why he has risen throughout the meta, you just witnessed the reason right there. That immediate mobility that he provides to everybody on the team not only translates to damage removed from your team, but it also translates flat out to damage, depending on if you're trying to be the one initiating or disengaging. And it forces the playstyle of Warriors to be very, very different. In particular, that if Misaka is not, specifically if Arthas, I guess, is making the transition from left to right, somebody has to make sure they hit a hard crowd control. In that last fight, Misaka was nowhere to be found, which means Soap's responsibility cannot be, I'm going to approach this left to right, or Lucio will do this all day. Smite on Tyrael can also make sure that this is an option. He has to flank. Otherwise, Ballistics just goes, is this a fight we want? If the answer is no, they go, all right, let's just zoop and boop right out.
Yeah, the fact that they didn't have to use any heroic abilities to get out from that, and SPT used Army of the Dead and Dragon Blade from that, Arthas has to be there, and Misaka has to be there as a way of enabling Genji to start whittling people down and get those resets that SPT needs with this kind of team composition. 2 more temples up, Ballistics in a far better position as they are getting both of the temples, at least for now. Both shooting down this final fort for SPT.
You notice how SPT is not making the transition up towards top. They were worried about the boss, but what this is going to mean is that Dahaka can global down whenever is necessary. It's one of those awkward situations where you normally want to bring the fight to the global on Sky Temple, so you always can avoid that. It is, in fact, the boss that is trying to force them into this position now, which means Ballistics is kind of winning all over the map. And because SPT did not transfer those bottom shots immediately, it actually leaves a window of opportunity that Ballistics could very comfortably collapse down if they chose to do so.
Yeah, they could have done that, but knowing that it's going to take a lot more time for SPT to finish those shots, they seem to be heading up to the top, stealing the Bruiser camp from them and maybe getting a push along with that.
Or what if they do both?
Oh. Soap's the only one down here. Just a couple of warriors trying to kill another warrior on top of this shrine.
Eventually.
Well, there's more coming. Here comes Magi. He's going to help out.
It's going to happen.
Yep.
Yep. Here he goes.
We were just going to switch away from that. That's not enough. Arthas has finally fallen as we look to the rest of the fight.
I spent 10 seconds waiting for that moment, and then it was taken from me. I am sorry. But that everything was built up for them. I needed to know, did Soap survive? I don't know. I know the death timer's there, but I don't know what happened to Soap. Okay.
Next time on SPT versus Ballistics. Wow.
Back to the action, though. Still 2-level advantage. If SPT is going to make this kind of boss poking that you see them so concerned about, now's the time to start. Otherwise, Ballistics will be using that Dahaka to make sure he gets the side soak, hit the 16 talents here. If this is the kind of cheeky play they want to go for, I feel like this is where they need to start the boss. So now that they haven't done so, it's kind of showing that they're indicating looking way, way down to the future. And what teamfight is that going to be? It seems 2 keeps down and 16 into 18, maybe 19. I'm going to be honest, I don't know if Ballistics will let them get the game to that point.
This fort is pretty low, maybe feeling like they could posture up in here, take down the fort, get the experience from that, and that would help get them to 16 faster. But Ballistics are more than willing to defend it even though it is low. And that was a 4v5 defense. And now 16's here, and SPT are out on the map. They're going to take this fight anyway, Dread.
Playing a tap attempt there by Misaka, an immediate response by Hooligan. Good job from him, making sure that the Murden doesn't become too big of a problem. Now the 16 is here. I'm surprised SPT is willing to continue to take this fight. Soap trying to back out now. MPL does connect a bit of damage from that cocktail. SDE goes in. Goes out pretty quick too.
Oh, I'm not sure they're going to get all the way out though. SDE is still trying, using that wall. The Lucio and the dive possibilities from Ballistic. Soap heads away from the rest of the team, knowing that there's no way he can go back up. There's 2 temples activating in a few seconds, and this whole time SPT has not been soaking, just trying to see if they can get the picks, get the fort, and then get out. They do retreat, except for Genji. They're going for the fight again, knowing that Dahaka's up in the top.
They lose themselves a Genji, though, so it is going to be a flat 4 versus 4 into the middle lane. The Sanctification actually hitting all 4 members there of Ballistics. Nice Impale and Burrow charge.
They still have Sound Barrier.
Falling low, and there's the Sound Barrier you were talking about. This is a pretty easy and clean fight by Ballistics, and it's going to lead to what I'm expecting to be game.
4th kill, only Rhaegar left, as he is running in Ghost Wolf form at least to try to draw away Ballistics and the rest. He's going to take down this fort, tried to take down the fort, but Ballistics will go for the boss.
I want to know if Ballistics is even going to be worried about the rest of the shots. I guess they'll leave the bidding of that to Jungha. And with that top keep going down after all that pressure, the shots remaining, and how much damage has been output onto the map, I wouldn't actually be surprised if they tried to reserve the rest of those top shots for core damage. Use this boss to make sure they get the keep down below, and then Dahaka just brush stock in whenever the core shots end up being removed. This is one of these cool decision-making. Oh, they're not even going to do either. Those are going to play it more passive. Another situation where the members of Ballistics get 16 talent here, a boss, and just kind of
they're 4-level leading.
Walk away.
Well, SPT does take the final 5 shots from the mid-temple. Need to deal with this boss. They've only lost the top keep, at least. They're hanging in, but it is by the grace of Ballistics that SPT gets a chance for another fight. Nubrak flanking around behind. Spotted Sun Xiao.
Not going to be able to hit that Storm Bolt, and there's SC using the Eldruin to make it out. Hooligan was split for a second, but not enough damage from LDC to be a problem. Jungha's just casually taking the shots on top. Boss is casually sieging up down below. SPT feels the panic. They feel the pressure, but they're not getting the fight that they feel like they need.
Yeah, they're not going to get anything better than this right here with those 2 keeps down. SPT are desperate to get any sort of kill, any sort of fight to start the resets, but Ballistics are picking them apart one by one, using the Sound Barrier. Still have Sanctification as they dive in for more.
Soap had a good Howling Blast there to get a little bit of peel, but just the chase and the crowd control from Ballistics' composition between that Tyrael and the Dragon Impale of a new Barak. This is going to lead to a 5-man wipe, 18-1 in terms of kills, and Ballistics find themselves 2 more points in day 5 of the group stage at GCWC.
Ending the game with a 5-level lead. Not something you see every day, but super clean from Ballistics. It all goes back to the drafting, knowing that they can pick that Tyrael, knowing that they can flex into these heavy melee style strategies, is the flexibility, the hero pools that this team of long-running veterans, especially SCSC, they have had a lot of changes, but especially SCSC and Jungha now, that they have that capacity to recognize that they can get the Zeratul in game 1 and pressure the Junkrat, and then have the Tyrael for the Sanctification, the Sound Barrier, and no resets, 0 resets for the members of SPT.
The one thing that I'm still looking at, though, even though it was dominant games, I'm still looking at those moments of void that with decision-making and pressure being applied from Ballistics, it just felt so uncharacteristic, especially when you look at some of the fights they were willing to take before that point and the confidence that they were willing to take them. I mean, you legitimately don't have a bigger advantage in the world. I mean, they still won the game and they still bait the members of SPT outright to be able to take that fight, and it looks amazing, but it wasn't the same function, and maybe a better team would have put him in a more awkward position. And so I'm going to be keeping an eye on that on Ballistics. Though it is dominant here today, I feel like it was expected for them to be. It's those kind of moments where they go, it seems like they're kind of confused on what direction they want to move, that I hope to see cleaned up.
Yeah, it makes me wonder just how much of a role Swoi had in the decision-making for this team, because some of the drafting we have been curious about for Ballistics, and now some of the decision-making, especially in this series for this team, just what emphasis Swoi had within the team, because this was a team that ever since Noblesse wasn't on anymore, they had struggles with their decision-making and their shot calling especially, and so they were kind of doing more of a fluid thing, and it seemed like they had figured out more by this point, but maybe it is just the lack of Swoi bringing in the new member. We've talked a lot about the roster swaps for other teams, but we do have to remember that this is a new-ish Ballistics having Magi on the team.
Yeah, that is a good point to bring up too, because when we've hyped everybody else as being the changed rosters, the roster changes coming in with 2 people being swapped out rather than just the one, but depending on who that is, the influence they have, I mean, that one debatably could be worth more, at least in the impact and effects have afterwards, than the 2 rosters. So that is a good point to bring up, is that we do see these from Ballistics, and it feels like we're downplaying them only because it's one change, but it really is no different than that of Roll20, Dignitas, and Fnatic when they play uncharacteristic from what we've come to expect from them.
One of the newer members of Ballistics retrieving MVP here with his Grey main play. It has been interesting to see all the changes that go along with bringing Magi to the team, some more flexibility for SDE and SC, and really just letting SDE be more of a carry for the team, which has been interesting to see. Does feel like this team has not always been consistent in every single game, and that goes across multiple players, but today things were really clean for them.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that you bring up, is it does feel a little inconsistent, especially in particular SDE. To me, it's just like, I look at them some games and I'm like, how have I not heard of you way before this point in time, right? And then I have other moments where I go kind of like, I just watched you almost 1 versus 5, but now it seems like you're struggling to be able to identify maybe this 1 versus 1 that he should have the advantage in. It's just cleaning up a couple of things here and there, but he has made a lot of improvements and a lot of development as time's gone on, and it's been a pleasure to be able to watch that growth. Yeah,
it's been very awesome to see SDE join and make a name for himself just like Hooligan, and I have no doubt Magi will be doing the same. But unfortunately for SPT, China's #1 team, things were rough for them versus Ballistics.
The positive side, at least if you're a Chinese fan of Heroes of the Storm, is the fact that though SPT is the #1 representative with China, they have generally been the weaker performer on land, so we still have that kind of hope within CE maybe to, you know, bring on the fight, but yeah, it's been a really tough tournament here for a lot of the Chinese teams.
Yeah, it is curious that I keep alluding to like Tempo Storm and how SPT did that too, but it is true that CE seems like they've been able to do better versus other regions. So we'll see how they do today, but they are playing versus another Chinese team later today. Up next, you don't want to go anywhere because Fnatic versus Dignitas, it's going to be so hype. We'll see you soon.